Welcome back to another episode of the DailyFlip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be going through a little bit more of a speculative piece. It's not our normal hit today. We're not going to be doing a daily debate. And I'm going to spend more time on the intro because I freaking feel like it. Yeah, you heard me right. So we're going to be talking about Apple today, what the future of Apple looks like. I am a person who has bought a small amount of shares in Apple. I will keep you informed on that front. I do have a vested interest in them doing well. But there was an interesting piece that came out from Wired the other day with the headline that read, "A key talent abandons Apple. Meet the new generation of leaders taking on the old guard." And for those of you who haven't heard the speculation, a lot of people are saying Tim Cook is out and that this era of Apple, the subscription services side, the financial benefit side for Apple, where they use the tools and market share that they've gained while not necessarily innovating to harvest as much money from the people that use their services. I'm not denigrating them. I have an iPhone. I'm recording on a Mac. I have multiple Macs. For work and personal. So I understand why a lot of people love Apple. And I too am a buyer of some of their subscriptions, including Apple TV. So I'm not trying to hate, I'm not trying to be mean to them, but I think that's a fair summation of Apple's tenure underneath Tim Cook. A lot of living off of the legacy of Steve Jobs, his design ideas, keeping things the same, making sure that they don't rock the boat too much, and getting as much money out of their users as possible. They're a great financial services company now, but there needs to be new breadth into the industry. And it doesn't have to come from Apple. Very seldom do the newest innovations come from Apple. A lot of them nowadays are Chinese companies like Xiaomi or Huawei. They're doing lots of things, pushing boundaries. Samsung was also on the fold trend, just like Xiaomi was. All of these different companies are pushing boundaries. They're trying to change the form factor of the iPhone. You have Meta going into AR, VR. These are all product categories that Apple hasn't necessarily delved into, hasn't been leading for a while. Either one of those can be used for any of the given categories, not necessarily mutually exclusive that both of them apply, but point overall is that they need a change. They need a new path forward. They need somebody that has a more focus on design. And that's why this story, talking about one person in particular who seems to be in the lead, is interesting speculation and why it gives me a little bit of hope and what that hope may mean. I could very well be wrong. I'm basing this a lot off of the rumors I've heard from a few other articles, The Verge, a previous Wire story, and this Wire story. This part of the article reads, "In the swirl of shifting talent, John Turnus, who has worked at Apple since 2001 and served as senior VP of hardware engineering for the last 4 years, reported directly to Tim Cook, is emerging as the frontrunner to succeed Cook as Apple CEO, working as soon as next year, reportedly as soon as next year." Wired asked Apple for comment, but didn't hear back from the company. So he's been working as a hardware engineering guy, a person who has hands-on on the tech, who is possibly working on new designs, ways to repackage things. Some accusations from people that are inside Apple is that he very often, at least in the later part of his career, isn't starting from the ground up, but rather he's coming into projects and improving them, streamlining them, and helping them close out. Now, regardless of any of those being true, a person who has more of a focus on the hardware. Honestly, I made a joke with a friend today that maybe they should just bring back Johnny Ives and have him be the product guy and focus on design and have the business run itself below that with the SVPs and the executive vice presidents at any given level. Could be a little bit crazy, but the point overall is in an era where we're no longer going to rely on the screen in our hand. Not everybody, but the bleeding edge, the cutting edge, is going to be in some form of augmented or supplemental reality. What do you mean by supplemental reality? So a AI pin, a device that relies on AI computing, not even one that you wear on your face, but something like a humane pin, something that OpenAI is likely to come out with. Though they could come out with a phone because it's a great interface, it is familiar. Supplemental hardware is going to directly add to the world around you, much like those AR glasses, but also in the form of interaction in the audio interface, a pin that can see around you and add context to those situations, that can be supplemental to life without taking away from it. A phone doesn't always have to take away from it. There are lots of things that you can enable on your phone that do not directly take away from what you're looking at. But a lot of the time, in order to pay attention to your phone, you have to look away from the rest of the world. Augmented reality provides the opportunity to simply interface with the world around you and provide information. Imagine you're looking out at a window, and the world we live in, the augmented reality is so smart that as you look away from the window, the edge of the window frame, actually provides a place for the text to come back. So as you look and turn your head towards the wall, the text you were just looking at comes back. And if something beautiful is happening outside and you want to pay attention, you look, you turn, and then the words fade behind the edge of the window frame so as to not obstruct your view from watching what is happening outside. Those sort of supplemental, additive pieces of technology that directly interface with us and the world around us provide so much potential for us to not simply use technology, not simply wield the tool, but bake it into almost everything in our life without it being obtrusive. And that is the most detrimental effect of technology. It's obtrusive into how you wish to live your life. The notifications that pull you out of what you're doing, the screen that keeps you addicted, the screen that provides instability when reading and has actually been linked to a lack of retention of information compared to when you're reading something on a hard copy. If you ever notice why your VPs probably print something out, it's one, because they're used to it, but two, because it's actually easier to retain something that you have on a physical medium. Some people argue that's because it's the positioning of the text. Some people say it's not refreshing, like your screen, your brain isn't being hit with 1,000 different stimuli. It's simpler. There are plenty of reasons, and yet not any one of them has to be true in order to prove the point that a screen very often leads to less retention when reading compared to a physical medium, especially when you're reading something like an article and you scroll. Now imagine a world where one of the arguments is that it's not a fixed position. It's hard for your brain to remember the words because you don't have them locked into one place. Their orientation, their placement is changing. Therefore, you can't have a geolocational, and this is not a term that scientists actually use, but imagine it as a geolocational tag. If you look at your favorite tree that is outside your house where you used to have a swing, even if the swing's not there, you have memories that are directly related with that tree. Much in the same way, your brain places things depending on the book, the cover. If you notice that you don't remember what a book is, and then you look at the cover and it brings back certain memories, it brings up that context. That is exactly what it's doing. It's trying to use those context clues. And now imagine a world where supplemental reality allows for more direct interfacing with the world around you. And even though things still may be scrolling, it enables your brain to latch on to certain details that it wouldn't have been able to before when it's confined to the exact same device, which is that beautiful, innovative, amazing phone of yours. So this is a shift for Apple that could very well define the next 10 to 15 years, much like Tim Cook's tenure. And for them to be not necessarily on the bleeding edge, but to keep pace and have a few knockouts in there, they're going to need somebody who is much more focused, who is focused on the products themselves, making them the best possible, and then selling it rather than finding the angles to sell something and then making it. Maybe that's just my opinion. Maybe I'm crazy, but I want to hear yours. Throw it down in the comment section. With that, if you want to read the entire article, will be linked in the description below that like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Podcast, Podvine, as well as Apple Podcast. And down there should be the Twitter link at your Daily Flip, where I post links to these episodes on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Though this week you're getting one on today, Thursday, and one tomorrow. So with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe. Don't die.